Today I have to troubleshoot some electrical malfunctioning on my 1996 Ford Thunderbird. Stay tuned, we'll detail what's malfunctioning and what part to replace. Welcome back to Pine Meadows Hobby Farm. I'm your host, Jerry Hansen. I've got to do some troubleshooting for my 1996 Ford Thunderbird. The problem is, one of the main problems is my battery keeps draining even without the key in the ignition. That's a hint of something that could possibly going on because I have some a ghost energy being sucked out of the car, and I don't know where that ghost energy is going because there shouldn't be anything going wrong. However, in addition to that, my radio stopped working and also my cruise control stopped working. So all these things have something in common. Let's go in and I'll show you. So, put the key in the ignition. The fan blower motor goes on, which it's not supposed to go on when I turn it on like this. And of course, my radio doesn't come on at all. And I can't demonstrate to you the cruise control not working because we actually have to be driving the car when it's not working. But these things, they all centralize to one common source. That common source is this. When you turn your key ignition off and on, it activates a little junction box switch down below. Let me show you. This is the new part I had to buy and replace. So it mounts in, this mounts under your steering column. And when you turn your key ignition on, it pushes a switch forward and backwards, which is, if you see a bunch of tabs in there, there's a bunch of wires that connect. This is all of your accessory components in your car, your radio, your air conditioning, your heater, your lighting, everything that goes on when the car is turned on, and when you turn the car off, everything is disconnected. So this is kind of a plastic material. Sometimes internally, one of those component things, the little slide switches inside, will break. And it'll lose contact or it'll come in constant contact with something because there's many little slides in there, as you could tell from those little tabs. Now, I'll dissect the old one when we get it out of there, and I'll show you the internal mechanisms and why it failed, what failed, and why we were losing power, ghost power, being sucked out of my battery constantly. So let's get this thing replaced and I'll show you what's going on. So with the malfunctions going on, I thought maybe it might be a fuse, so I checked all the fuses in my fuse block under the dash, also under the hood. And none of those fuses were bad, so I had to go back and think, what is really going on here? I passed it through the brains of my master mechanic friend, and he says, and he specializes in this, he says it's in the steering column. It is the key lock ignition switch component, electric module, and so we're going to change that out. I'll show you what that electric module is. So now I got to twist my body in odd contortions to try to get this. We've got to take off this bottom panel here, and then the bottom panel of the steering column to get to that module. So let's remove this bottom panel first. To remove this bottom panel, you need to remove 3 nuts here. There's another one over here, and you use a 5/16 nut driver. So the first one remove that. Oh, where'd it go? Okay, here's the first one. And then you pull it, that drops down. But now these got tabs in. You got to pull out. See, these are the type of clips that are in the pins, and they fit in those little holes right there. And then you got a set of 3 of them. There's 1, 2, and this one over here. And there they are. And that's what you're dealing with, those little clips. Set that aside. Now the shroud over the steering wheel has 3 screws to take out. Got to remove that shroud to get to all the screws. Actually, it's got 4 screws, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, yes. And it just takes a Phillips screwdriver for that. So you remove all of those. Before we go any farther, this is your steering wheel lever. You pull it forward, make sure your steering wheel is all the way up. Now you've got to remove that lever. And to remove that lever, you get a little wrench that'll fit it. And I use this smaller crescent wrench. It's got 2 little flat spots on there. You can see those. So we're just going to get this on there, and we're going to take this off. And once you get it loosened, then you can turn it out of there and take that piece out. And then your shroud falls out. So make sure you have your 4 screws. See, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now this other hole right here, there's a 5th hole in there. That is for to stick a Phillips screwdriver up when you're removing your ignition lock and replacing your ignition lock. But we don't have to remove the ignition lock at this point. So let's get that other component out of there. And this is what we're talking about right there. So we've got to take that out. It's held in by 2 hex nut, or I mean these star bits. I don't know what size that is. You'll have to figure it out. But we got 2 of them. We're going to remove those. And then there's another one up here. And then there's your wiring harness. Now you have a nut in there to release, and that nut, I found a 7mm which fits it. So we're going to take that off. And there's the broken one. We're going to dissect this later and find out what's going on. So there's the switching mechanism that goes back and forth. So let's get the new one in place. And the new one just goes in reverse order. This pin right here, you got to make sure it lines up with your ignition switch up there. So plug this in. It only goes in one way. You line it up with the holes. And you just make sure that nut's down tight so it's firmly seated. Your wiring harness is firmly seated in there. Now you see that ignition slide right there. It's this hole right here has to line up with this pin right here. So we're going to put the pin in the next position. Okay, that should be it. And you line that up with that hole, and it should just seat properly in place. Don't force it. You'll break something if you force it. Oh. Get that screw started. Now before we go any further, let's see. Ha, my radio still don't work. Got to be something else going on with the radio. My AC works. My radio doesn't work, my clock doesn't work, and my cruise control doesn't work still. Okay, now once we got that bottom panel back on with those 4 Phillips screws, we're going to replace this panel, and you just line it up with those holes. And they snap back in. And a 5/16 inch. Replace your mounting nuts underneath. There's only 3 of them. Put those on. And then we reinsert the lever that controls the power or the steering wheel adjustment. It just screws back in. Tighten it down, and you're back in business. By the way, those bolts that are holding the ignition control module in place, they use a torque bit. I'm not sure of the size because it's kind of rusted. I can't see the size of it. But I just kept going through my sizes until I found one that fit. So, no more loss of phantom power draining from my battery because this module was malfunctioning and it's broken. And it has some switches that does control accessories around the panel. But unfortunately, this is not what affects my cruise control, my radio, and my clock. After doing some research, I found out it's actually the clock spring that's located inside of the steering wheel. So that is the next project, to be able to purchase a clock spring and replace that. So stay tuned to that video. This video is just replacing the ignition control module or switch. I don't know what you call it, but that's what it is. And this is the part number for it. I just ordered this off of eBay, and it is perfect fit for my model and make of my car. So let's break this open, and I'll show you the internal functionings of this, and that way you can see what malfunctions in this and what you're dealing with if you're having to replace it. Okay, now that we got the switch disassembled, I want to show you guys the internal functioning of it. This is it. That's all it is, folks. That's all that's inside. This slips back and forth, making connections with these various leads that the wires are connected to. And that's what sends power to your accessories in your accessory panel. So unfortunately, this one right here, this malfunction, as you can see, a little bit of it broke, a little bit of that plastic broke off. This just sets in there with a little spring. Pull that out and you can see where the little bit of the plastic broke off. So it didn't ride totally even. So it was causing a short even when the key ignition was off. And so it still caused a little bit of drain from the battery, and that's where I was losing all my battery power. Well, I hope this helps you with troubleshooting some problems with your 1996 Ford Thunderbird. Stay tuned for the next episode on the Ford Thunderbird on the Backyard Mechanics series. I'm going to be replacing the clock spring in the steering wheel. That requires removing the airbag, among other things. And we'll go over why I know it's the clock spring. Stay tuned for that show. You could do that by subscribing and clicking that bell icon. That alerts you to new videos as I upload them. Also, click a thumbs up. That helps out my channel. Share our videos on your social media platforms. Helps us out too. Also, if you'd like, leave a comment. And hey, be safe and always be kind. We'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye now.